Okay, good morning and welcome to the Macclesfield Town Council Planning Committee meeting for the 15th of January 2021. Due to the COVID restrictions, then the meeting is taking place on Zoom. So first we have apologies for absence, and I don't think there are any. Moving on to declarations of interest. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chairman. I have declarations of interest, a non-pecuniary interest on applications 20/5571M, 20/5666M, 20/5693M. They are all AstraZeneca applications. I'm a former employee and I'm in receipt of a pension from that company. Also, application 20/5628M, which is concerning the Heritage Centre, again a non-pecuniary interest, but I sit on the Silk Heritage Trust Board.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. Just for public record, and I'd like to declare a non-pecuniary interest in application 20/422M, and it is only purely for public record. The pub that we now own used to belong to Frederick Robinson, who I believe is the applicant. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Move on to the minutes of the Planning Committee meeting held on the 18th of December. To consider those as true.
Sorry, Chair, can we go into public speaking?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay, so we have 3 public speakers. Could I just pass over to the admin and governance manager?
Okay, so Tracy, would you like to go first? And I think you wanted to cover the statement that you sent in. I will time you for 3 minutes, and when you have 1 minute remaining, I will hold up a sign for you, just so you're aware.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for listening to me. I submitted a statement ahead of this meeting in an effort to save time, as most of my statement is the same as what has previously been discussed. I'd like it to be noted that there is not a supporting statement with the latest plans, and there's no application at all on the planning portal. Having looked through the new plans, I can see there are now 7 flats, meaning a small improvement to the parking issues, but there is still insufficient space to enable all parking and loading to take place off the street. I believe it is impossible for vehicles to enter and leave in a forward direction, which is a must under MBLP DC6. It should also be noted that the office and communal space is big enough to accommodate an 8th flat should they choose to change its use. This property was originally a bungalow, approximately 109 square metres. It's been extensively extended over the years and is now 225 square metres. The plans that have been submitted would take it to around 400 square metres. The lack of dimensions on the plans makes this hard to calculate. This will be achieved by raising the roof, meaning it will dwarf our neighbouring bungalow, which at its closest point is less than 8 metres away. It was previously mentioned that there are huge houses along Ivy Lane. Although this is a true statement, it is woefully unfair to compare, as those houses are on enormous plots and not in close proximity to neighbours. The properties at the flower pot end of Ivy Lane are predominantly bungalows. I beg that you come and visit the site and you will see just how close the property is to our bungalow, and I'm sure you will realise just how out of character a block of flats would be. The applicant describes the facility as being staffed 24 hours a day. The noise, light and smell pollution that comes from running a 24-hour business on a small site in a built-up area will have a detrimental impact on the welfare of the surrounding neighbours. I'd like to reiterate we are not objecting to supported living. The supported living aspect of this application is not a planning matter. There is nothing to stop these flats being sold as private dwellings, whereas the loss of amenity listed in my statement is a planning concern, and that is what the decision should be based upon. All other objections raised by the Town Council on the 17th of January and the 3rd of July last year still remain, and therefore your recommendation for the application to be withdrawn should still apply. I've separately listed the objections on the statement. I don't fully understand the planning process, but this has been going on for over a year, and the delay seems to be the repeated submissions of plans that aren't addressing the problems. It's incredibly stressful and upsetting. Where in the process does the residents' welfare get considered? Thank you.
And over to Alison. I'll also time you for 3 minutes. Thank you.
Our home is angled immediately behind 28 Ivy Lane on the northern aspect, with our boundaries adjoined. As you will see from the further submitted plans, they have not addressed any of the 9 reasons for objections previously made by the Town Council. There have been very minor amendments internally, but apart from a possible improvement to the parking, there are still major concerns with regard to the manoeuvrability of vehicles into and out of the spaces due to the confines of this area. Insufficient parking will lead to parking on the roadside, causing a major traffic hazard at a busy junction, which is the main entry and exit road to the residential area. We strongly object on the basis of invasion of privacy due to insufficient space between buildings. The proposal does not comply with recommended distance requirements between habitable rooms. Our privacy would be massively affected by the placement of windows on the northern aspect, which would look directly into our bedroom and living areas. The original application was to increase the property by a further 188 square metres, which is larger than the actual footprint of the original bungalow. The current plans are for a larger building, which will be dominating, overshadowing a building in mass and size. This property has already been extensively extended with 4 previous planning applications, and this proposal must exceed the percentage limit as to how much an original building can be extended, leading to overdevelopment of the site. The application originally was described as C3 residential status. C3 is for a group of 6 people living together in a single household receiving care. The proposal is for 7 individual flats. The increase in the noise level, smells from 7 kitchens, light pollution, along with carers and visitors, support staff, will be enormous and have a significant impact on the immediate neighbours. There are some large houses built on Ivy Lane which were built in the 1930s and are all original size properties built on large scale plots appropriate to the size of the house. 28 Ivy Lane was built as a bungalow set amongst other bungalows, and therefore to place a block of flats on this much smaller plot would be dominating. The property has always been a single-storey bungalow from the southern Ivy Lane aspect. It became a 2-storey building on the northern Sycamore Crescent aspect by adding a lower floor. The roof level of the property has never been raised. As the bungalow was built on a corner of the road and sloped downwards, this allowed for the creation of a lower floor. At the last Town Council meeting, it was asked what amenities would be affected by the immediate neighbours. Amenity refers to the noise, overlooking, overshadowing, loss of privacy, smells, light pollution, visual impacts and traffic and congestion. All of the above points have been detailed in the 94 submissions of objections to this proposal made by the local residents, evidencing and with reference to various planning policies that would not be adhered to, including the Cheshire East Borough Design Guide. We again ask for the Town Council to consider the many objections from the neighbours and the local residents which have been registered and reject this application. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you.
Okay, and John Knight, your 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, councillors. I've submitted in advance a 5-page written statement which sets out our concerns. We don't live immediately adjacent to this property. We live just down the Little Ginnell on Amberley Road, but certainly within very close proximity, and we're very used to walking and driving past this site literally on a daily basis. In fact, I've been out this morning there and back to take my wife somewhere. If you've read it, I'm not going to repeat it. I'm just going to try and summarise the key points here. I support what has recently been said by the 2 immediate residents, in particular that this is the 3rd round of consultation, and it's almost as if it's, I wouldn't say getting worse, but it's certainly getting no better in terms of the applicability to the site and their understanding of this area. So the proposed revisions are very small indeed. They're a change of number, but not much change in terms of scale and size. but due to the difficulties of the plans and the lack of information on the plans, it's very difficult, as has been said, to actually try and understand exactly what the differences are between the two, or indeed three versions of this proposal. Some minor changes to appearance, but again, there's very little information there. And in particular, I know the local residents are particularly concerned about the window-to-window distances, and that is something that is absolutely vital for privacy, and something that planning policy addresses. The other change is in terms of the car parking layout, and I would again support what has been said. I come from a planning background. I'm a chartered town planner. So a lot of my documentation is about planning policy, because as you will know, then the starting point for a planning decision is the development plan, which is the policies which determine at national, borough and local level what's applicable to make a planning decision. So that's why a lot of my statement is based on planning policy. I do have major concerns about the car parking in terms of on-site for the variety of uses which used to take place there, the residential and care uses. And it's both on-site and off-site, because off-site you will be well aware, I'm sure, of the close proximity to the junction with Ivy Lane and the Flowerpot junction, both of which are extremely busy, and for which we've had a fatal accident at the Flowerpot junction in the last few years, if you recall. There is alternative provision for this use, and I think, as again has been said, we're not against the use, but not on this site. There's a scheme by these developers being progressed extremely well at Weston, next to the shopping centre, and within 5 minutes walk of the Broughton Cross supermarket and so on. So there is alternative provision.
John. Sorry, that's your 3 minutes. It goes really quickly.
That's fine. Thank you.
I'll just hand to the chair now in case he wants to comment.
No, I'd just like to thank you very much for coming forward today and for bringing those statements with you, which are extremely helpful to us in making decisions about these planning matters. So thank you very much. Now I'm going to ask you to leave the meeting now, but you can follow the meeting. This will be the first item discussed, and you can follow the meeting on the YouTube channel, the Macclesfield Town Council YouTube. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll proceed with the rest of the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. So before we go on to discuss each of the individual applications, we'll first look at the minutes from the Planning Committee meeting held on the 18th. And is to consider those as a true record. Do you have anybody to propose? Councillor Edwards to propose, Councillor Wilson to second, and all those in favour? Yes. Pass those as a true record. Are there any matters arising from those minutes?
Sorry, can I just stop you there? Councillor Roberts didn't raise your hand. Are you abstaining because you weren't there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any matters arising from those minutes? No. Okay, moving on to the planning applications. A slight adjustment to the order in that we will take the application for Ivy Lane first. So this is application, Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, having read the report on the planning portal, having heard the submissions from the three speakers, I can find no justification to change the Town Council's original decision on this application, that we should object, and we should object for the original reasons that we objected last time. As has been said, okay, they've reduced the number of apartments down by one, number of flats down by one from 8 to 7, but there seems to be very little change in the actual overall design and space within the property. And there is still the issue on the car parking of safe access and ingress to the car park. And all the other reasons that we had to say that we're not happy and we wish to refuse this or object to this still stand. And so I would move that we object on the same grounds as in previous consultations.
Yeah. Can I just clarify for any members of the public watching that this is the proposal for extension and internal alterations to the existing buildings of 28 Ivy Lane to provide 7 living apartments supported with associated parking facilities, just to be clear.
Oh, yes. So do you wish me, Chairman, to read out the reasons we object just for the benefit of anyone watching this?
Well, can I just bring in Councillor Wilson first, just in case it's a different point, then we'll go back to that.
No, I was wanting to second Councillor Jackson's proposal, and I was going to read out the objections, but I'm more than happy for Councillor Jackson to do that, or I can do it.
Thank you.
No, Councillor Jackson, please, if you read out.
But can I speak then, please, after Councillor Jackson's read out the reasons?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. So the reasons for our objection are the development is overbearing. There is overdevelopment of the site, loss of natural light to neighbouring properties, loss of privacy to existing properties, not meeting the standard spacing between habitable rooms as documented in SADPD HOU 11, proximity to a busy highway and junction, loss of amenity to neighbours. The development does not conform to policy DC 38 in the Macclesfield Borough Local Plan, and the number of rooms exceed the limit set by use class C3.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to add a further point, which was from our discussions in July about this application. We've actually discussed it twice now, and we have objected to it twice. And I agree with Councillor Jackson, there is no reason for us to change our view because the plans have changed very, very little. In fact, the bedroom 8 has now become an office, which is one of our public speakers said could clearly be converted back to a bedroom, in due course. But we did talk, all our speakers spoke about parking and issues with parking. And I would like to add to the list of objections, the insufficient parking with the provision not meeting the car parking standards as set out in Appendix C of Cheshire East Council's local plan strategy. We've heard from the residents, there's been very little change to the plans. We've objected to this twice before for the reasons that Councillor Jackson has just outlined, and I've added 1.2. I therefore believe that we should continue with our objection on that basis. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Edwards.
Could I just add to what Councillor Wilson and Councillor Jackson have said about the parking? I was absolutely amazed that I think it was 3 parking spaces before. They've now increased that to 7 parking spaces. 4 of them are on sort of grass with sort of matting set into it, as far as I could see anyway. And you just couldn't get the cars in and out there. You know, I don't know how a planner can actually sit down and say, right, well, we need 7 parking spaces. Oh yes, I'm sure this will go through, this will be fine. You know, I can't see how they could possibly come to us with this plan for 7 parking spaces. I couldn't get a car in and out there. Anyway, that's my point. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a proposal from Councillor Jackson that we reject this for the reasons given, seconded by Councillor Wilson.
Sorry, can I just check, if Councillor Jackson, are you happy to add that amendment to the list of objections? Right, okay. Thank you.
Okay, so all those in favour of that proposal? That's everybody. Thank you. So moving on to the next planning application, which is the first on the agenda, and this is application 20/5442M, which is the proposed removal of condition 6 on application 17/4277M. This is the application for the building of 135 dwellings from Chelford Road and Worley Road in Henbury. So, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. We have discussed the number of applications relating to this site at many previous occasions at this committee and raised a number of concerns about those applications. And one of the concerns we have repeatedly raised is that of the increased traffic created by these three developments. The condition 6 that this application is seeking to remove is for the developers to agree amongst them, there's three developers involved in these three parcels of land, to deal with the traffic congestion that will no doubtedly occur at the Broken Cross roundabout. An alternative scheme was put forward to replace the roundabout with traffic lights, smart traffic lights that can judge the amount of traffic, etc. But if you look at the traffic, on Chelford Road, it certainly is not decreasing over the years. Condition 6 was that the three developers should work together to produce a traffic management scheme at the Broken Cross roundabout. One of the developers is applying, Robinson's, is applying for that condition to be put to one side. It seems from the application paperwork that developers haven't been able to agree between them who should actually, I assume, pay for it and you know, share amongst themselves the cost. We have on this application objections to this from the other two developers, Jones's Homes and Redrow Homes, and their comment, they've submitted identical comments on this application, that the application to remove condition 6 goes against the decision which was agreed upon with ourselves and the applicant, and the principles under which the outlined consent for the three sites allocated in Henbury were determined together by committee. And they both go on to say, in summary, the application should be refused. I think we have to object to this application. I think the principle that because three developers can't agree between them to mitigate the traffic congestion that will occur as a result of these significant developments that they will make a substantial profit from, they can't agree who's going to pay for the traffic management schemes. I think that will be the slippery slope for that to be allowed to happen. We cannot possibly be in a situation where developers can just say, well, we can't agree, so we're going to ask not to do it. So we're in a situation where there's three developers, one's asked for a condition to be put to one side. I expect because they want to start building the 135 properties there that they're applying for, but the other two, they're saying no, don't go ahead. Just a quick word, Chair, on the traffic congestion on Chester Road and Broken Cross roundabout. The figures that have been put forward by the applicant about the traffic on the roads were taken during COVID. They're slightly more than they were in an earlier assessment in 2017, but I would have expected the traffic will increase significantly once people are, I mean, there's regular queues at that roundabout. So I think we should continue with our concerns about the implications for traffic on the surrounding roads of this application, and we should object to this request to put to one side a key. When this outline planning commission was agreed, it was a key point that the developers had to agree and introduce appropriate traffic measures, and we cannot allow them to put that to one side simply because they can't agree on how that can go forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Edwards. Yeah, you're on mute, sir.
Can I give a sort of what if situation? If we were to allow this and the traffic was as bad as we think it's going to be, the onus will fall on the taxpayer to put it right in the future. Well, they've agreed to do this work. We can't allow them to wriggle out of it now. If they want to develop the land, they've got to do the roundabout, haven't they? As simple as that. Thank you.
Yes, all developers are strongly encouraged to appoint a master plan when working with other groups of developers, and that's part of the planning process which they are well aware of. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I'll second the proposal if it hasn't already been seconded. And yes, I really have concerns here that if this is allowed, then the scheme will not get the scheme coming forward in the way that it should. And the whole point of this agreement, this condition 6, was to ensure that there would be a scheme in place before the first property on any of these developments was sold. So that was the guide on it. And because this one small development wants to come forward, that's the reason why they're wanting this condition to be removed. But frankly, they need to get together and get their act sorted out on this, really.
Okay, Chairman. So we have a proposal from Councillor Wilson that this is rejected for the reasons listed, seconded by Councillor Jackson. So those in favour of that proposal? Again, that's all. So thank you. Moving on. This is application 20/5400M, which is the proposal for a temporary use of a site as the main compound for the nearby railway scheme, and it's the location is off Withyfold Drive in Macclesfield. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chairman. I was very concerned when I read this report, just because there are issues around that area in the town. I don't feel that the access to the site is acceptable for the use of heavy goods vehicles and the volume of traffic that would be coming in and out of that site. It states it's temporary and takes a little bit of delving into the report to actually find what that means in the application. This application, the use of a site would run from February 21 to March 23, but Network Rail have got a licence with the landowner for 3 years. So this could go on for a considerable period. So my issues with this are the access for the heavy goods vehicles in and out of the site, the movements of traffic around the site, the impact on the residential amenity. There are a number of impacts there. There's all the movements of vehicles, there's the noise, there's the lights pollution, and this is going to be a 24/7 operation. It lists the movements even down to a Saturday evening through to Sunday morning, 11 o'clock till 7:30, where there will be 8 staff in the offices on site, but also 6 gangs of 5 men coming on and off the site. And this is all very disturbing for the local residents to have all this movement going on in such close proximity to them, notwithstanding all the heavy goods vehicle movements as well. And having looked at the cabins, the welfare cabins that will be placed on the site, I had a look at those, and I could see no evidence of any COVID safety spacing within these cabins. It was showing, you know, lots of tables, chairs, close proximity within these cabins, and I would certainly expect this company to provide a report on their COVID safety for the use of this site. I think we need, there needs to be a very precise report on COVID safety for the users on, you know, the workmen on the site and the use of the site. Because I'm concerned about its impact, the COVID impact on the area, on the residents and the nearby other businesses, you know, the shops, etc. around the area that these workers would be going into. We have to be assured that that it will be safe and not become a sort of super spreader site. I do have concern about that, apart from the other planning issues. But I will move objection on the conditions on highways and the other light pollution, noise pollution, impact on the amenity of the residents. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would like to second Councillor Jackson's objection and the reasons for that. The actual road itself, Garden Street, and the areas around there are already subject to an HGV weight restriction. But of course, those weight restrictions don't apply if it's access to a location. So the protection that the residents on these very narrow streets currently have from having HGVs thundering past their properties will not exist, because it'll be access to this site. Councillor Jackson's covered all the points of objection that I would wish to add. But I do think that to have a site of this nature in the middle of a residential estate, where the only access to the site is through a residential estate, is not acceptable. The road's narrow, it's unsuitable for large articulated vehicles, and in fact there's already on that bottom end of the road because of the Tesco's Tesco's location. So I second Councillor Jackson's objection. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers on this? It does worry me, the exit from Tesco. It's a very, very busy area going there. That's into Black Lane, isn't it? Yeah. So we have a proposal from Councillor Jackson, seconded by Councillor Wilson. So those in favour of that proposal? And again, that's everybody. So we like to put in a rejection to that. Moving on. Application 20/4651M. This is the proposed conversion of the existing diving shop to an office and 4 residential apartments. This is at 51 to 53 Park Lane. Do you have anybody to speak on this? Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chairman. This is on Central Ward. We have seen this before. This is just some revised plans, and we had no objection last time to this. A concern has been raised by a resident about the parking,
Yeah.
because there is no provision of parking with this site. But that is the case now with a lot of conversions or sites within the town. And it is close to all amenities. and I know that Cheshire East do waive parking requirements on properties that are in or close to the town centre and to local amenities. So I do appreciate the concern of the residents around there, but I just feel that it is not a reason that we can suggest refusal on it. It will be overruled anyway, but I think by just stating our concern about lack of parking, I think definitely need to say that. So we will be putting in a comment, but I would say that personally I don't object, but I do raise the concern about the lack of parking.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak on this one? Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. As I've said previously on other applications, I sometimes welcome these conversions from empty shops and offices into living accommodation, but as always, the parking problem crops up. And while I do welcome this development, this application, I do feel that eventually giving way to parking or no parking is going to accumulate over the developments in the town centre, and I think a longer term strategy should be looked at by Cheshire East rather than just putting a tick or a cross against an application. But in the main, I quite welcome the application, but again, long term, the concern is parking. Thank you.
Yeah, me too. I welcome the application. I think it's a direction that we're trying to move in, especially for some of the empty properties, to create more residential dwellings within the town centre or close to the town centre. So we welcome that application. So moving on, it's application 20/5567M, and this is the first floor front extension porch and some rear extension on Vine Close. Do you have any comments on that? No. Next, application 20/5633. This is a proposed garage conversion into a room and Redshank Drive. Again, no objections. If you just excuse me a moment, I'm going to have to try and block the light coming in. Unsuccessfully. Bear with me. There we go. So no objections to that one. Next application, this is 20/5571M. This is a series of proposals from AstraZeneca, and this is the two-storey porter cabin. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chairman. I just noted on this one, I have no objection whatsoever, and just again, I think as we always do with any AstraZeneca applications, just say thank you so much to AstraZeneca and all the workers for what they're doing to help us in this situation, the crisis with the vaccine. I have no objection, but I did note that Environmental Health had asked for hours of construction, so I would just want to reiterate that we would want to ensure that hours of construction are on this application.
Okay, thank you. Next application is 20/5666M. Again, it's an AstraZeneca proposal for a single-storey porter cabin. So no objections to that. And the final one from AstraZeneca is 20/5693M, and this is the two-storey porter cabin building again to go in accordance with the COVID-19 compliance. So again, we have no objections to that. Next, we have application 20/4852M, and this is a proposal for listed building consent. It's for double glazed sash windows for a bathroom and utility room. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, this is a Grade 2 listed building in the High Street Conservation Area, and obviously being in conservation area has to be looked at by our conservation officer, and he has deemed that it is acceptable, that the change is acceptable within the conservation area, and therefore that I have no objection. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to application 20/5603M, and this is a demolition of an existing garage replaced with a new detached garage and a cover, annex cover. This is on Victoria Road. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you. Again, no objection, as I'm sure we all agree with that. But again, I just wanted to bring to our attention that Environmental Health have asked for hours of construction on this one.
Yeah.
So we would support that.
Yeah. So that must be limited from, it's at 8 to 6 and then 9 till 2 on a Saturday. Yeah.
There are standard hours for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have application 20/5628M, and this is again a listed building consent for insertion of partitions and fire doors. Now, this is at the Heritage Centre, and it's urgently required to allow reopening for safety matters. So, anybody comments on that, Councillor Jackson?
Just for information, Conservation Officer is supporting this.
Super. So we have support for that.
Excuse me, no objections then?
No objections there, no. Application 20/5566M. Now this is change of use. This is on Chestergate for the East Cheshire Hospice charity to a therapy centre, looking to support family and adult bereavement. So it's adaptations to the existing 2 floors in order to achieve that. Do you have any, Councillor Jackson?
Thank you. Again, on Central Ward, I certainly welcome this. I think it's a great use of this original shop, retail shop. Maybe I should have declared an interest, because I was a regular user of the East Cheshire Hospice charity shop that was in this property, and I'll be sorry to see it go, but I think this is an excellent use, and so no objection. And I just wanted for information to say that the Conservation Officer is happy with it, and also hours of construction have been suggested for this. So just with those comments, no objection. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'd just like to say it's just, I think it's a really good application, because these types of support services, really welcomed, in the town. When I saw it, I just thought it was a really good move. Moving on to application 20/5141M. Now this is a 2-storey extension over the garage and the dormer loft conversion, and it's on Tamar Close on Macclesfield. Now there are a number of resident comments on this. Councillor Wilson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is an application which is extending a property which will it's a 2-storey extension of a garage and dormer loft conversion, which actually means this property will then become a 3-storey property. There are objections from residents on the planning portal. In summary, the objections relate to concerns about overlooking from the increased size of the property, and also concerns that the property is out of keeping with other properties around it. What I think we should support those residents in their objections. I wouldn't necessarily say we should object to the application itself, but I do think we ought to ask the planning officers to look into these issues, because there are planning conditions about overlooking and distances in between properties. These are covered by the retained Macclesfield Borough Council policy DC 38. So it's difficult to judge from some of these plans. When we heard from public speakers earlier, plans don't seem to include measurements these days. It's quite difficult unless you physically go and look at something, and it's difficult to then imagine, you know, how the overlooking is going to be. But I think we should support the residents in their concerns about this, and make a comment that we have concerns about the application, and we would like the planning officers to be certain that there are no overlooking issues, and also to be cognizant of the fact that the application, if successful, will make the property very much out of keeping with others in the area, and ask planning to make sure those criteria are met before this is agreed by an officer.
Yeah, thank you very much. Councillor Roberts.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm looking at the, I got confused looking at this application on the location plan. I don't know if you've got it in front of you, but Tamar Close with the red boundary around it, which I am assuming is the property concerned. It's showing number 10, and number 11 is over to the right of the close.
Yeah, I do recall that.
I just is that an error on the planning? It definitely says number 10.
Do you think we should have
I just thought I'd raise it. I've no real objections, but I do take on board Councillor Wilson's concerns regarding the residents who live close by. I think we should ensure that all planning matters have been strictly adhered to. But on this plan that I'm looking at it now, the location plan, it's definitely showing with a red boundary around it, number 10 rather than number 11. I'm just wondering if it's an error on the website. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson, did you want to? Thank you, Councillor.
I was just going to continue from what Councillor Roberts has said. This is a general comment now, not specifically in relation to this application. But there's a growing incidence of applications not listing who the case officer is, which makes it very difficult. Is it the case on this one, isn't it, Councillor Roberts? Yeah, so there's a growing number of applications have no planning officer's name listed, which makes it very difficult for residents and ourselves as members of the planning committees to actually go and have a look to see, you know, to query things, and residents to query. It's a general comment rather than on this particular application, because I don't have it in front of me. But I do think we should ask the planning officer to attend to these two issues as part of considering this application.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Actually, I have the note here for this application, and believe it or not, it is one of how many applications have we got on this paper. It is one of very few that actually has the planning officer listed, and it's Danielle Sammy. But because I made a note of it, because I'd been doing the same as Councillor Wilson, I couldn't believe it, how many of the applications had no case officer and listed. I mean, they will have one, I'm sure, but nobody listed. And so at the very point that Councillor Wilson has made, you know, how can we contact the officer just when we have a query on something? And I had a query on another application further on in the agenda. And that's what actually drew it to my attention. And I went back and went through all the applications and found that there were a handful that had an officer listed, and all the rest, nothing. So it's just something I think we need to send a message back to the planning department that it would be helpful to have that on the report. So sorry, that was just, it was really just to come back on that. But I fully support what's been raised on this one, the issues that have been raised, and I certainly back them. And I don't know quite how would we list it then as commenting on, rather than saying we object or we don't object, maybe just to say we have comments, maybe a response like that.
Yeah, if Councillor Wilson can just come up with the proposed wording, then I think that would be helpful. So there's some clarity.
Yes, I propose that we comment on this application without making any statement about whether we support it or don't support it. Sometimes we say we support this but want this looking at, and sometimes we say we object for these reasons. But I neither support or object to this application at the moment because I don't have the information to take that decision. So I move that we comment on this application, that we request the planning officer to look carefully at planning policies in respect of overlooking, which is DC 38 from the retained Macclesfield Borough Council, and also that the proposed development is out of keeping with others. And before agreeing the application under delegated authority, ensures those planning policies have been met.
Okay, and do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Roberts. So those in favour of that proposal? That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, can I just intervene before we move on to the next application and make a comment in relation to what myself and Councillor Jackson have just said? I mean, my comment was general about the being no planning officer appointed, and indeed this one is one of the very few that does have a planning officer appointed, so we do know who to refer to. But I think that I do support what Councillor Jackson said in terms of actually making some comments about this, and I would like to move that we ask the Admin and Governance Manager to write to Cheshire East Council Planning Department to express our concerns about this and to ask for a rationale, and to ask when we are going to have planning officers allocated. It's not just one application, it's nearly all of them. And I think, you know, our view is to represent residents and comment on these applications. We have a number of speakers come to our committees. When it goes to the actual formal planning decision, the amount of speakers is very much restricted at Northern Planning and Strategic Planning. We get 5 minutes if we attend. Objectors only get 3 minutes between them. So, you know, we are very much the voice of the residents here and listen to what residents say, as we have done this morning, and we consider what they say very carefully. So I'd like an explanation as to why this is happening, and some information about when it's going to, you know, be rectified and the planning officers are going to be allocated. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
It's transparency, Chair. It's so the public know who to contact. And
yeah, it is. Yeah, it allows us to do a better job to represent the public.
I'll do that, Councillor Wilson. Thank
you. Okay, we're ready to move on to the next application. This is application 20/5674M, which is a single-storey side extension on Buxton Road. No objections or comments on that. Next, application 20/5722M. This is a two-storey side and single-storey front and rear extension on Chelford Road. No comments there. Application 20/5740. This is an internal garage conversion on a new build property. This is on Fleming Drive, Macclesfield. Do we have any comments on that? Okay, moving on. Application 20/5747M. This is a single-storey rear extension and pitched roof to be made to existing flat roof garage. So it's conversion there on Penrith Avenue. No comments there. Right, next, application 203259M. And this is on Cottage Street. This is retrospective application to remove existing brick and slate. Build toilet and replace it with a timber frame summer house. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you. This is on Central Ward, and I must say that I do not like retrospective applications. That these shouldn't occur. People should ensure that they have planning permission before they start any work, and because this example here of this application is the sort of problem that then arises. And there are real concerns with this. Concerns have been raised regarding the height of the building, that it stands at 2.9 metres and should only be at a height of 2.5, although it is very difficult to actually ascertain that from the plans. The plans are not complete and not very extensive. And this is the very application that led me then to look at where the case officers are, because there's no case officer listed. There was no way that I could get hold of anybody to ask these questions. I also noted that there'd been removal of trees, which was another complaint by an adjoining neighbour. And all in all, I think that we should object to this on the grounds it is retrospective. There are concerns on the height of the building, and that it is contravening DC 38 of the Macclesfield Borough local plan. So that's...
Yeah, thank you very much. Is there any other comments on that? I did see that there was references to possible land steal, that they've gone beyond the boundaries of there.
Well, that's a civil matter, Chairman.
Yeah.
There are some issues within the report that are civil matters rather than planning matters.
Okay.
So even though you might agree with what's stated there, they aren't planning matters, so we can't really take those up.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Wilson.
Yes, I'm happy to second Councillor Jackson's proposal that we object to this application for the reasons stated. It's another application where the drawings aren't very clear. In fact, some of the drawings submitted with the application don't include the adjoining outbuilding that is being referred to. Councillor Jackson's quite correct that there is a neighbour dispute element about this, which is a civil matter, but there are planning elements too. And of course, the application has gone ahead and been built without seeking planning permission, which is always something that applicants do at their own risk. So I object. I support the objection on the reason stated.
Does anybody else like to speak? No. So we have a proposal to object for the reasons listed from Councillor Jackson and seconded by Councillor Wilson. Those in favour of that? That's us all. So we object to that one. Moving forward, we've got application 20/5794M. This is a single story extension on Swetnam Street. No comments there. Application 20/5834M, which is a single story and rear extension, new front porch on Newlyn Avenue. And the final application, new application, is 20/5828M. This is a proposed demolition of a single story rear extension and addition of a part extension on Yew Tree Close. So no comments on that either. So we're moving now on to item 6 on the agenda, which is an appeal, and this relates to planning application 193352M, which is land off Savile Street, Macclesfield, and our action is to consider a response to the appeal. Now, we did pass this application or raise no objections to it the last time that we met, so I don't know whether we want to, anybody wants to comment on it? No, so we just note that and move on. Item 7 is a conservation area review, and the action is to note that report and take further updates. And Councillor Jackson, if you could just take us through this one.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yes, we've all had this report, and really in a way this is just for the benefit of those who might be viewing this meeting, and I think it's just worthwhile to briefly go through it for their benefit. So the Town Council is going to undertake a review of the Macclesfield Conservation Area, and in order to do that we needed to put out tenders for a consultant who would undertake that work for us, and we have a small group who have been progressing that, made up of yourself, Chairman, Councillor Fiona Wilson, myself, Town Clerk and the Admin and Governance Manager. And we are working through that process. We have had 9 applicants for the role. We have reviewed all of them. We have a very robust process to do that, to maintain that it is fair and open. And we have now selected a consultant to undertake the work for us, but we are still in the process of getting that through the system with contracts and various other things we need to do. So it is not finalised as yet, and as soon as it is, then we can then share that. But what I will say is that we had a really good selection of applicants, very high standard, and we are very pleased with the selection of people who came forward and with our choice, as I'm sure everyone will be. So we hope to be able to let people know about that in due course. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jackson. Moving on to item 8, which is the town character assessment, and Councillor Wilson is going to take us through this.
Yes, thanks very much indeed, Chair. We now have formed a character assessment working group. This has been agreed at a previous meeting, so has been previously documented, but to assist members of the public watching the meeting, the working group consists of myself, yourself, Chair, and myself and Councillor Jackson. And we've been doing extensive research to help us to start the process of actually writing our character assessment. We've identified the character assessment areas we're interested in, and these range from transport, the economy, climate change, landscape, flood risk, habitat, open spaces, infrastructure, housing, homes of multiple occupation, and community assets, and also King's Cumberland Street cricket pitch. We listened to a representative from the public at the last meeting about the open space there that potentially will be lost with the developments. So this is something that we are making good progress on. We have agreed our terms of reference at a previous meeting, and I'm very pleased to say that our first meeting of our working group will be in the next few minutes at the conclusion of this planning committee meeting. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Moving on to the planning consultation working group minutes, the action to approve the minutes from that final planning consultation held on the 30th of October 20.
Can I just clarify, because there were going to be no further of those meetings, because it was a very much a defined working group, this is just an opportunity to complete the exercise of approving of the full set of minutes for the working group.
So I propose that we approve those. Seconded, Councillor Jackson, and those in favour? Yeah, so all in favour of those. Moving on to item 10, we don't have any correspondence, and we don't have any members' items. So the date and time of the next meeting is at 10 AM on the 5th of February 2021. And we'll still be on Zoom because of the COVID restrictions. So sadly, we can't meet in person yet again. So with that, I conclude the meeting is now over.